Welcome to the Green and Golden Boys Packers podcast.
Coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
I'm Charles.
And I'm Marcus. And this is the Packers podcast for fans from inside enemy territory.
And this is new sound for the new era. Oh, yeah. Marcus, how about that new sound?
How about it? New sound for a new era of Packers football. I do like it. Well done.
You like that? Rodgers who?
Yeah,
go,
seriously.
Man. Bears weekend. Welcome back, guys. We haven't done an episode in a while. Obviously, we're just a couple days here. We're recording on Thursday before the opening weekend. Bears, Packers. So pumped to start yet another season of a divisional game. Don't love when the NFL does that to us, but here we are, man. It's the best rivalry in the league, and it's the best league in the world. So I'm excited to get going again. How are you, Marcus?
I'm doing well. I will say oldest rivalry in the league certainly hasn't been the best over the last, 10 or 15 years, but
historically,
sure. Historically. Not recently, but historically. Regardless, it's Packers Bears. It's week 1. NFL football is back. Let's go.
Let's freaking go. It's the first time in like 10 years we're not saying, hey, we're going to go 13-3 or 4 and lose in the first or second round of the playoffs. We have no idea what's going to happen this year. We have a new quarterback for those of you who are really living under a rock and still in their the darkness retreat. So if you guys have been in a darkness retreat the last couple of months, Rodgers did in fact leave us. And Jordan Love, man, it's a new era. And honestly, that's all we can really talk about.
Can I interrupt you? And I just did.
Yeah.
Really quick. I want to say something. So you making some great points here. New era, new quarterback, youngest team in the NFL, youngest team in the last 5 years, average age of 24.9 years of age. Anyway, I want everyone listening and you and myself to just take a breath and remember this moment in the next couple of days before this game, because in all honesty, and we'll see what happens, but this could be the best we feel this entire season. And I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying, remember the anticipation, the excitement we're feeling right now, and just enjoy the journey. And that's all I really wanted to say.
And that's a really good point, because that's the best. That's the reason why the NFL is the best league, in the major sports, right? Because every team right now has some level of this is our year. For the Packers, it's the first time that to your point, it's the young team. It's a new team. Jordan Love might be a flop. He might be the third consecutive MVP caliber quarterback that the Packers have, and really don't know. I mean, right now, one of the things on our agenda is to look at kind of over under, prop bets of how Jordan Love is going to do, and they're just guesses. We have no idea.
Nope.
We have our feelings, but I think that's a good point. I'm super excited. Now, if by the end of the year we're showing no promise and we're doing this podcast 2-3 years later and we're showing no promise, this gets old fast, but it's exciting. So speaking of Jordan Love, speaking of those prop bets, obviously he's the main story of not just this game, but the year, right? So before we dive into Bears, Packers, all that good stuff, I just want to get your impression of what you hope to see and what you expect to see from Jordan Love. Like, what makes a good year for Jordan Love this year, to kind of outline some, stats and some kind of framework. Obviously quarterbacks are measured on yards thrown, touchdowns thrown, and interceptions thrown. The betting lines have him at 21.5 touchdowns thrown this year and 13.5 interceptions thrown this year. To put it in that context, Rodgers last year, who did not have a great season for his standards, had 26 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. One of his few years, I think maybe his only year, he threw double digits interceptions. Do you think Jordan Love has any chance of basically doing what Aaron Rodgers did last year in a down year for Rodgers? Or is that a tall order?
Yeah, I mean, I think he does. I think Rodgers wasn't even a top half of the league quarterback last year, and I think Jordan Love can certainly be better than that. I think I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of days and the last week, and I think if he can do something like 28 touchdowns and 15 interceptions, I would not be mad at that because I think that tells you a couple things. I think it tells you he's taking some risks, but he's also, he's capitalizing when the opportunity is there. And I think if this receiving core and the running game those guys can stay healthy, and if our new tight end Luke Musgrave can, be a threat in the red zone, those numbers aren't out of the question.
I completely agree. I mean, you actually kind of stole a little bit of my take. I mean, 15 interceptions would be promising, and exactly why you said it. It means he's taking some risks. If he comes out of this year with 21 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, that means he was being way too conservative. Wasn't taking any chances. And I don't think that's what we want to see out of a first year quarterback.
Right.
Right. I think we want to see him take those chances when he needs to. The
Yeah.
exciting thing about this year is that we get to see Matt LaFleur's offense for the first time, really, right? Without it being checked out of by Rodgers every other play. So a lot of this will be really
Don't say that to Matt
management.
LaFleur.
Right? A lot of this will be game management. So I would expect to see not as many interceptions, in first half of games, but at a certain point, he's going to be put in situations where he's got to go make a play. That Favre style of let's go make something happen, and that's where I expect to see most of his interceptions. It's like, hey man, we're down by 14 in the fourth quarter, make something happen, and I think we're going to lose a couple games like that where he's just forcing it because he feels like he has to.
Yep, and we want to get to a point where he doesn't feel like he needs to force the ball. I think what we've seen from Jordan Love, especially this preseason, is that he's pretty calm. If he can maintain sort of that even keel, that just calm demeanor, that coolness under pressure. I don't think we're going to see a ton of forced throws, but he's going to have some mistakes. He's going to throw some interceptions. It's going to happen, and this is the year to break a few eggs when you're making that omelet. So yeah, we want to see him kind of play within the offense, but extend himself a little bit, get outside his comfort zone a little bit this year, because I think that's when you see the growth in a young quarterback.
Well, the Packers, are expected, the over-under on total wins this year is 7.5. 8 wins does not get you into the playoffs. 9 or 10 does. What does this team have to do to first beat 7.5 wins? And then, not to be a total homer, but what does this team have to do to potentially even make a playoff?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier. I think if Jordan Love can be, a top 12 quarterback this year, top 13, manage the game well, play within the offense, dissect the defense to an extent, make the right reads, throw the ball well. He doesn't have to be an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes or a, Joe Burrow or whatever, but, be a really, really good game manager, at least this season. And I think with the weapons we have, and especially with the offensive line, they're going to give him time to make the right decisions. And I think, again, we've seen some of the playmaking ability. So improvisation is going to be important to an extent at some points. But I think just really playing within the offense, taking what the defense gives you, if it's a check down or if it's a screen pass or if it's a play action, or if he's got an opportunity to keep the ball and make a play with his legs. Those are going to be really important for his success. And I think this team's success too this year.
100%. If he can be, by the way, if you just look at like the lines, those 21.5 touchdowns, 13.5 interceptions, and about 3,400 yards, that you nailed it. It makes him a top 14 quarterback from last year. So to your point, if he's a 12 or 13th quarterback, that gets him those lines, and it matches basically what Rodgers did last year. For me to get over 7.5 wins is not going to be offense. It's going to be defense. If Love is good enough to maintain and get you 21, 24 points, right, within the system. And we get Jair Alexander of 2 years ago and the end of last year, and Rashawn Gary comes back, who's healthy or healthier than we expected at this point in the season. Quay Walker takes another step up. And then I think Devontae Wyatt, big part of this, right? The other Bulldog. If those guys are what we thought they were going to be last year, and they can keep teams in check and take the ball away once or twice, and Jordan Love is just that average quarterback, that top 14, 15 quarterback. I hate to say it, that might be enough to get us into the playoffs, right? Last year we had a weak defense, and then we had a weak offense, and we were a play and a half away from the Lions from making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just see it a little improvement on the defensive side of the ball, and we maintain that offensive production, that might be enough to cross it. And I can't believe we're 20 minutes or whatever into this podcast, and we haven't even brought up our best player on the team right now. We still have freaking Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I know this is not a running back league anymore, but like, they're so dynamic, and specifically Aaron Jones. You know, he's going to be, I think he's going to be the safety blanket for Love, kind of like Devontae was for Rodgers. Obviously, nowhere near the same in terms of production, but you know, we got a guy that can run the ball, and we got the guy who can literally line up as a receiver and catch balls if he has to. So I'm pretty excited. I'm not ready to predict playoffs yet, but I'm optimistic, and why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, I mean, I think this running game is going to be really important to our offense's success, and yeah, kind of a security blanket for Jordan Love. We mentioned play action, we mentioned screen passes and things like that. We're going to see a lot of that at the line of scrimmage, I think, and especially in this first game. I would expect the first half to be really scripted, kind of off the play action, but that kind of comes with establishing the run, and also. I don't know if I'm getting way too excited about this guy or not, but don't discount Emmanuel Wilson. He made the team as running back number 3. AJ Dillon coming off a subpar year last year. I'm not making any prediction or anything like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this season Emmanuel Wilson kind of moved up in the depth charts and running back 2, just because if we want to keep Aaron Jones any longer after this year, then we might have to, let AJ Dillon walk in free agency. We'll see, but excited to have a third running back in the stable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess obviously we're homers, so we're all picking Super Bowl or bust. But what's your official preseason prediction? What's the Packers' records after 17 games?
Man, I keep going back and forth on this because I wouldn't be surprised if we win 6 games, and I wouldn't be surprised if we won 10 or 11. But I'm gonna keep it optimistic yet conservative and say Packers end up 9-8. And that may be or may not be enough to make the playoffs, but that's my prediction.
Yeah, I'm concerned because I still think this is supposedly a tougher division, right? Apparently, just because the Lions beat the Packers twice, they're obviously going to be Super Bowl champions next year. So everyone's got the Lions winning it all, and the Vikings are obviously still the Vikings. Yeah, I'm going to be optimistic too. I mean, everyone thinks that the Packers are going to be either really good or really bad, right? And I just think why? I mean, in the middle just kind of makes sense. If I was given my honest opinion, I mean, an 8-win season where we're in the losses, but we lose by a field goal or two, or we lose by an interception that Love throws late in the game. I mean, that's success, I think, in my book, right? I mean, as long as we're seeing that Watson, Dobbs, Love connection, that's the most important connection, because to your point, Aaron Jones might not be here in a year. So if we get 8 wins and see that receiver connection develop, I mean, we should be super excited. But I'm going to be a homer. I'm going to say we're going to get that 10, go up to 10 wins. I don't mind our schedule here. I think if we're able to pull off this win against the Bears in week 1, that gives us a huge, especially this defense, a huge motivation factor. Our schedule, quote unquote, gets easier the next 3 or 4 weeks, albeit away. But we don't have that traditional juggernaut early on this year, and if we were to string a few wins together right away, that would just get this confidence of this team going, and I'm gonna spoil my prediction. I like the Packers. I like the Packers winning this one, and I think we could go on a little bit of a heater here early and hopefully get up to 10 wins.
Nice. Well, let's talk a little bit about this matchup between the Bears and the Packers. I wanted to touch on kind of the offseason moves that the Bears made. They were the worst team in the NFL last year. They had the number 1 pick. which they traded away, but they got some guys in free agency that I think a lot of people are excited about. So they got a couple of defensive linemen, DeMarcus Walker and Yannick Ngakoue. Those guys, totaling about 17 sacks, 18 sacks over the last year. Linebacker TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds, guys with a couple sacks and both over 100 tackles. Running back Deontay Foreman, who had almost 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, over 4 yards a carry. And then, like I mentioned before, they traded the first pick to the Panthers for their number 9, number 61, 2024 first round pick, and a 2025 second round pick. And the Panthers wide receiver 1 from last year, DJ Moore, who was over and above their best player. He had almost 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, 63 receptions. He had twice as many of each of those categories than the next player closest to him. And he's now a Chicago Bear. And they've got a couple of guys that I think are notably someone to talk about too. Guys we're familiar with. Tight ends Robert Tonyan and Mercedes Lewis are now both on the Bears roster. He has tight end Cole Kmet, who had almost 600 yards last year, 7 TDs. I think the biggest thing is this year Justin Fields has way more options. He doesn't just have 1 or 2 guys. He doesn't just have a tight end and a running back he needs to draw on. He's got some wide receivers, he's got some tight ends, he's got some running backs, and I think we're going to see a very similar offensive play style to the Packers, where your offense goes through the running game. It's going to be play action. It's going to be quick passes, quick crossers, slants, stuff like that. Get him comfortable. And then we all know what he can do on the ground. I mean, he had over 1,000 yards rushing last year as a quarterback, 8 touchdowns, over 7 yards a carry. So this is, I think, an offense that a lot of people are excited about. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge this week against the Bears.
Yes and no. I mean, yes, 100%. I completely see your point. The offensive part of those new additions to the team, I'm more concerned about them the second time we meet the Bears, right? I mean, week 1, no offense is going to be, defense typically wins out, in the matches earlier on, not always, but earlier on. And especially when you're talking about such a new group, like the Packers are, by the way, I'm more concerned about those new offensive threats when they become more in a group, more in a rhythm. Defensively, those guys that you listed are very transient players, right? And Ngakoue, I think, was on the Vikings and somebody else's team last year, which means they're not the top of the line, right? I mean, there's sacks there. I for sure see that, but these are guys that move around, and I'm thankful, I should say, that our oldest players or most veteran players on this team are our offensive alignment, right? So I kind of like these matchups. The sacks are intimidating, but they're guys that don't stick around for too long in any one team, and there's usually a reason for that, right?
Yeah, I'm not really that concerned with their longevity. You know what I mean? Because even guys that are there on a 1-year deal can still make an impact. So some to consider, but we'll see what happens. I just think
of Smith. What's his name?
Za'Darius.
To the Vikings, right? Za'Darius. Thank you, Za'Darius. He flashed, to your point, so that he could make an impact in one game, but then fell off a cliff, right? So as a whole organization, like, I'm not the Bears in 2023. Not as concerned. Those couple of guys this one game, okay, kind of concerning. They're rested week 1. Let's go get a rookie quarterback, which, by the way, really struggled when Kansas City threw everything they had at him when he played for Rodgers. I think we might see a lot of that, a lot of blitzing, a lot of, hey, let's try and confuse the young guy. But the Bears don't scare me long term. Are the Packers going to be better? I don't know. But I don't see the Bears being too big of a threat in the NFC as a whole.
All right. Well, why don't we talk about our predictions a little bit? Can you give us the betting line?
Bears are favored by 1.5 points. I don't have the over under, I don't believe, but 1.5 points. The Bears are slightly favored.
I mean, that makes sense. They're at home. It's week 1. They made some off-season acquisitions, so understandable.
We have no idea who Jordan Love is, really, right? So, Yeah. What do you think? The Packers go down and keep Matt LaFleur's undefeated record against the Bears going?
No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be back and forth, but I think the Packers lose a close one at the end of the day, 27-24 Bears.
I completely agree with your prediction if Christian Watson doesn't play. If we're throwing a rookie quarterback out there essentially without Dobbs and Christian Watson, Christian, by the way, showed up on yesterday's injury report, hamstring. So that's concerning.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone on the field right now is going to be a rookie. So even if we had Aaron Rodgers, we'd be concerned about that. But if we have him and we have our guy Aaron Jones and our defense shows up the way they can, I think we win. And I'm going to be optimistic. I do think it's a lower scoring game because, again, I think defenses win the day. So I'm going to take the Packers 17-14.
All right, I love it. I hope the Packers score a ton of points and they win the game, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
Crown Jordan Love MVP after week 1. I mean, wouldn't that be something? Man, I can already hear all the Vikings fans going, "Really again? Oh, a third quarterback."
I mean, yeah, it's a little soon for that. We'll see how this entire season goes before we're going to make that prediction.
Let's make it. Let's make it now. Come on. How badly do you want it?
It's not a question of whether or not I want it because I want it so bad. But I think we've seen, too, you don't need an MVP quarterback to win the Super Bowl. I think if Jordan Love can consistently be a top 8, top 10 quarterback and 1 or 2 years they can catch fire at the end of the season, I think that's enough. Obviously, I'd love him to be the reincarnation of Patrick Mahomes, but or I should say the second coming, not the reincarnation of. But very unlikely, obviously. But I really want him to be good, so bad.
Awesome. Me too. Well, guys, I think that does it for us today. Please subscribe to us on your favorite streaming service. And Marcus, with the new sound playing in the background, let's get a loud one.
Go Pack, go.